Well, I was born and raised down in West Palm Beach, Florida, and had a pretty good upbringing. But my real father, when he found out that I was conceived and my mom was going to give birth, he decided he wanted a divorce. So I didn't have a father figure growing up. So I was raised by my mother, her two sisters. One was a twin and an older sister, and then my grandmother. So 4 girls raised me. And when I was 6 years old, John Paul Knowles was a guy that was going around the United States serial killing. And he ended up entering my home while I was at school, and my aunt was there. She had cerebral palsy, my mom's twin. And he raped her while my mom was at work and I was at school. I came home from school, and there was a man with a sawed-off shotgun there. So he took me and tied me up to my aunt on a bed that was bloody and pretty nasty scene. So I think some of the things I've done in my life were because of that trauma. But he tied us up back to back, and we ended up having to wait for my mom to get done with work. So when she got done with work, she came home, and it was just about dark. And he had no way to go anywhere, I guess, so he kidnapped her and took the car. And then they went. And I didn't know where she was. I didn't know what was going on, and it was pretty scary. And we had to somehow get untied, and the two of us wiggled and tried for hours and hours, and eventually I got free, and I was able to go to the kitchen hopping and find a butter knife to get my hands free. And finally did, and then we went untied, and we got my aunt untied, and we called the police. But back then there was no 911, and this is in the 70s. So they ended up catching him in a mistake. He had a hotel, and he went to go out to get supplies, groceries or whatnot, and he locked himself out. And my mom was able to call the police, and they set up a sting, and they got him. And he had never let people live. So this is where I think God was in my life at a young age, whereas me, my aunt, and my mom all lived. He normally killed everyone that he had been involved with. And so they ended up catching him, and on the way to the jail, he reached for the cop's gun somehow, and the cop pulled out his gun in the car and blew him away and ended his life. But that was one trauma that I had at age 6. And then at age 8, I was riding a horse. My mom, she did the best she could with trying to help me recover from that. So there was like sleep therapy and all kinds of different trauma therapy. And she did the best she could with recovering as a single mother. So with the sleep therapy and all the different things, at age 8, I was going out to a ranch. They had a horseback riding therapy that they wanted us to get and do. And there was a girl that was my, I guess, instructor because I'd never ridden a horse. I had to go in the back and hold on. And as I was doing that, she says, you're actually touching me where I don't want you to touch, because I was holding on tight. And she's like, you better stop. And I couldn't. I was so scared. And she said, I'm going to make this horse buck. She did, and we both fell off. And when I landed on my feet, but the horse stepped right on my femur, and he broke my femur in 2 spots. So then I was in traction for 3 months in the hospital, and a body cast for 6 months. So that was 2 different traumas that just were really horrific in my life that I didn't know how to deal with. So at a young age, I found marijuana, and it was a way to escape. So I started to experiment with drinking, and my mother did the same thing back in the day. But I certainly know now, when I look back, that God was in those days, and that the things that I had gone through were for today, for the testimony by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. I know that to be true. We become overcomers, and I feel that God has definitely brought me through some things. So at age, I guess that was 8, I had done and had a full year to 9. In the teen years, I ended up experimenting with drugs and alcohol and partying a lot, and I met my first wife. She was in the same high school, and so we started dating and whatnot. And she had a kid with somebody else in the middle of our dating, and I that was a trauma again. The person that I cared about and loved had a kid with somebody else, but that person didn't stick around. So I ended up raising this other person's kid with her and stayed with her, and then ended up getting her pregnant as well, and had my own baby boy at age 18, and was married at 18, um, and divorced by 21. But in the meantime, the marriage didn't last at all because we didn't put any kind of. I did what I thought was the right thing to do. We didn't put any kind of religion or anything in the marriage. It was just all flesh, all self, all everything. So doing that, I ended up getting a divorce at age 19. Or actually, we separated, and I didn't get a divorce till I met my wife that I have now. She helped me get the divorce at the time. So anyhow, I was young, and I met Gloria in an apartment complex. My wife that I have now, we lived in a community complex that had a pool that had a pool table by the pool, and they always had a keg on file, on tap. So we would always have parties there, like every day. And that's how we met, was poolside. And there was Hurricane Andrew. So it was 1992 when her and I actually got to know each other better than just seeing each other at the pool. We had a hurricane party for Andrew in the height of my drinking and drugging career. And we basically fell in love and didn't have God in our lives. So we did end up dating for quite a long time. She made me wait forever. And then, because I was still married at the time, she helped me get divorced. And I got divorced finally with her help, and we did end up getting married. And she quickly got pregnant with with my second son. And in the meantime, I became a weekend warrior with my first son, and that's all trauma. If you've ever had to deal with being separated from your kids or whatnot. So these are all build-up things that I went to the left. I went hard into drinking and drugging and staying away from anything that related to God. I will say, I'll backtrack. My mom tried to do the best she could and put me at third grade into a Christian Alliance school. And they gave me my first Bible that I was ever given, and I still have it to this day, in 1973. And that Bible I still keep in my work trailer. So I have it to this day. It's decrepit, so God has been a part of my life the whole time. So going back to where I'm with my wife now, I've got one son. I couldn't stop. I started spiraling down with the drinking and drugging because it kept increasing. So it went from just drinking alcohol and marijuana to every drug under the sun except for needle. I wasn't a big needle fan. From that, spiraling down, we almost divorced a few times. Things got really bad. We had to go to therapy multiple times. And the final therapist we ended up doing was where we had broke up for almost 2-3 weeks because she'd caught me doing what I said I would never do. I was a good liar at the time. I could live one life at home and lie about what I'd done during the day. I could live one life at the bar and lie about what I had done all day, and one life at work and lie about what I've done all night and all day. So, I was a very good liar back in the day. So I was spiraling out of control, doing my thing, and we had to go to the one final therapist. She decided that she would give me one more try if we did this one therapy, and it had Reiki involved. And I had no idea that was a thing, let alone witchcraft. And so in the end, the course was $2,500 each. It was crazy money. And we came up with the money somehow, some way, because we had scraped nickels. And that most of our problems ended up from being money related because the amount of money I spent on drinking and drugging, and she's trying to raise our son by herself. I give her full credit for what she's done. And I just couldn't get out of me. It was all about everything was to please me. So this witchcraft type therapy I figured out quickly that I could manipulate and tell them what they wanted to hear, and the relationship started getting better. Everything started working, and I was like, "Oh, I can lie through this too. I'm good at this. I know right what to do." So I lied through that, and never quit. Never did any stopping of any drinking and drugging, but hit it. And so years ago, I did it for quite a few years, and I still was spiraling down, but I was able to maintain a facade. So now my level of insanity, of lying and deceit, had increased, and I had become a professional liar because every day I had to lie about lies I told the day before, and it was just a horrible cycle. Um, so she came out one night and said she's going to put my son to bed, and I was thinking, "Oh, this is great! I'll have a free moment." So she was going to read a story to my son, and I was at the house, and we were back together. Things were good, and this is how we ended up in a one last stand where I had to change my life. I was doing cocaine at the time, and I had some hidden, and I figured I have probably a good 15 to 20 minutes to do some cocaine while she's in the room, and she'll never know because she hadn't known the whole day and all the days before, and I've been hiding it. So I had put it on the counter in the kitchen, and I decided I was going to roll up a dollar bill and do my snorting of some cocaine. And all of a sudden I hear, "Dad, what are you doing?" And I look over, and there's my son. And I said, "Oh, nothing, go back to bed." And then she heard that, came out and saw what I was doing. And that was it. She's like, "That's it. You need to get out." And we ended up getting full separation from that point. And she wasn't having me back. It was a mess. And it was the lowest point I'd ever had in my life, to where I actually realized I had an issue. I had a problem. I mean, I'd heard about all the programs and all the different things that people want you to admit you're this or you're that, like a drug addict or alcoholic. I never admitted it. I would say it to get through the meeting and get the points I needed to go on in life, but I never really thought it was in my heart. And at this point, I knew something was wrong. So I decided, for me, I wanted to quit. I wanted to be the father my son needed. I wanted to be the husband, but it was too late. And my wife wasn't having it at the time. She said, "We're going to be separated." I had to move out that night. And she went through with the divorce. Yeah, a full, painstaking divorce. And she got very bitter in that time, where she just couldn't be hurt again. She put up a wall, and I tried to get her back, and she wasn't having it. But God had something different planned. In that time, I had decided to go to meetings, and I met a sponsor, a guy that wanted me to be his sponsee. And he introduced me to the Bible like I'd never seen it before. And the Big Book, which is a blue book from AA that they consider their Bible. But this sponsor was about God, and he had the real Bible, and he taught from that. But he wouldn't let me go to church where he went to church. He says, "You're not ready for that." He says, "You're going to get a Jesus lobotomy." That was his words. I was like, "What?" So it made me want to go to his church, but he wouldn't let me go to his church. He wouldn't tell me where it was. He wouldn't tell me anything. So I was doing this sobriety thing. One day went into 2 days, and next thing you know, I'm getting my chips at the end of the month, a white chip, all the different colors. I got my 9-month chip, which is a red chip. He let me come to his church. And I was so proud of myself, because I'd never done anything that was sober or truthful in my whole entire existence. And this is the first time that God started speaking to me in real terms when I'd opened the Bible. That's another thing. Let me go back to, I was taken in by some people that I knew from the bars. Duffy's had a bartender and a cook that were married, and another bartender from another Duffy's, and they all lived in a house out in Jupiter Farms. Well, I knew them all really well, because I'd spent hundreds of thousands of dollars there, and tipped quite well. And they let me stay in their house. But the only room they had was a house off the kitchen that was supposed to be a big pantry, but they turned it into a bedroom for those that got too drunk or too high. They had to go into this zero walls, zero windows, and it was one door in, one door. They called it the cave, and that's what they called it at their house. And I literally went in there and did my Isle of Patmos type of thing, cave experience with God. I had a rug that I would take my Bible and vanilla wafers. I'll never forget. I lived on a box of vanilla wafers like every week, and prayer. I didn't eat, like I would get Hungry Man dinners and whatnot, and I would pray that God would restore my marriage, even though we ended up going through the divorce. Anyhow, we went through the full-on divorce. And it was the saddest day in court. I brought my Bible and everything. I'm thinking, God, just make it not happen. But it did. And I had to, at that point, I never took off my wedding ring. But at that point, the full divorce, I took it off and I took another couple gold things I had and I melted them down and made an AA ring. But instead of making it size on a different finger, I made it go back on my wedding finger. And I put it on and I never gave up that. Like Abraham, God, if you can restore, if you want this marriage, you can restore it. And I knew in my heart that this marriage was meant to be, and I told my wife, you are my soulmate at that day. I said, you will serve the Lord with me, because at the time I'd been serving the Lord for quite a while, and he prophesied through me. And I said, you will be a Proverbs 31 woman. And, excuse me. It was beautiful because I needed to get away, and the Lord let it be to where it was just me and him. And that time that I was in that cave, I grew spiritually. I grew in relationship to the Lord, and I heard his voice. And I learned to do what I say and say what I mean and let my yes be yes and my no be no. For the first time in my life. So 9 months went by. They didn't want me at this house anymore because I was getting too religious. So now I had to move out and find another place to live. So I found another roommate, and I started getting my son on weekends as well as my other son. So as a weekend warrior, double fold. And one day I was supposed to get my son. And right at the year anniversary, when I was about to get my medallion, and I got sick. I couldn't get my medallion. I couldn't get anything. I was just sick. I couldn't pick up my son, and I called my ex-wife now, and I said, I can't get my son. And then now, at this meantime, the two of us could not stand each other. We couldn't talk. We had to have a mediator. When we get so heated when we would talk, that a mediator would have to have our son, and I had to meet in a neutral location. I couldn't, she put a warrant, because I get a little red hair angry, if you will. And I know it's hard to believe. But I was tough. And so I get a little verbal, if that's a small word, I guess. And she put a restraining order on me, and the whole thing was very volatile. But that time when I got sick, I was able to talk to her, and she was different. And something was in her voice, and she says, okay, no worries. And she hung up. And I didn't think anything of it. And I went to sleep. I took medicine. There was a knock on the door, not that night, but the next night. And she brought soup over. I was like, what? Who are you? You know? And from that point, something clicked. She saw a difference in me. She said, when she came with the soup, she says, something in you has changed. And I see a difference in you. You're not who you once were. And so the testimony that I would have to say would be that that was definitely the start of getting back together with her. And next thing you know, we're dating. I'm taking her out for dinner, and we tried clubbing. And at the time, I was sober. I didn't drink. It's not the same if you're not drinking. Try and dance. It's like, But we got back together. We started doing different things, boating and whatnot. And we ended up falling back in love. And I asked her to marry me, and she said no. I was like, what? What? She blew my mind. I was like, what? She goes, but, we could still date and we can hang out and I'll live with you. I was like, that's not okay. What? I'm reading that's not correct. But I was like, I want my wife back. And so we did it. And the Lord worked on two of us. And she still wouldn't come to church. At the time, she was full Catholic. And her parents are 100% Catholic. But that prophecy that was spoken through me to her was a seed. And months went by, and I said, you're going to come to church? Because I kept going to church. And I was very involved. Back in the day, I would go 5 times a week, because I played as a worship leader there too. And she wasn't having it. But one Sunday, she decided she would. And they had an altar call, and she accepted Jesus into her heart. And the Holy Spirit came upon her, and she's never went back to the Catholic Church. She never missed another day of church after that either. From that one time, she became full on in. And the two of us just started growing together. And I asked her to marry me again. She said, nope. And I ended up having a girl with her, made her pregnant, and we had our daughter. And our daughter was just old enough to start walking. And she says, you know what, I think it's time that we get married. And I said, well, let's do this. I was so excited. I was like, yeah. So I talked to the pastor, and we arranged everything. And my daughter was the flower girl at our wedding. It was so beautiful. And here I am over 10 years later, she's probably 2 when she walked, and found there was some church hurt that happened. So that pastor married me, and things were going so good, and things started getting real cliquey at the church where I was attending. And I guess that happens in life to certain things, certain places. But there was some dirt that was found out about the pastor. And I knew about it because I was a good friend with another guitar player that was his ex-wife's best friend. His wife was. So he thought the dirt was going to get out because I knew this other person. So anyhow, there was a whole like soap opera type of thing that made them want to push me out of the church. And they started making it real hard. But my wife and I were like, this is where we found Christ. This can't be. But I knew in my heart, I started journaling, and I knew in my heart that it was time to go. So I started writing down, journaling. And I still have these books back in the day. When I first started getting the word that it was time to go, I wrote it down. My wife was like, no, I just found a church home. No, we're not leaving this. I think she said something like, suck it up, buttercup, was the word she used. And she's 4'10", but she's got an attitude, like 7-foot Amazonian. So I was sucking it up for a year and a half. We sucked it up. And I was journaling all the different events that happened that I knew they were pushing me out. So I have this whole journal of different things that should never happen, but did. And then the Lord gave me, I kept asking God, why am I still here? And I said, when will I know it's time for me to go? He says, when your spirit leaps inside of you like John in the womb. And one day I was there, and one of the security guys played in the band. And out of nowhere, like a weirdest, like demonic thing happened. He said something about a microphone cable. And I said, well, you should know how to do that. You've been doing this for years. He goes, well, I'm going to beat your, and, he said he was going to fight me, like try it. So all of a sudden my spirit leaped. I said, oh, it's time to go. And I had told my wife, when that happens, I'm going whether you come or not. I'm going to pack my stuff up. This was a Sunday service. I ended up doing the service. I said, okay, Lord, I know it's time to go. I did the service. It got real ugly. We didn't fight. I calmed it down somehow. Um, but I came back on that Wednesday, if that was supposed to be another service happening. That morning, I packed all my stuff up and never looked back. And that night, we came to Revive Church for the first time. And the funny thing is, the old church had the acronym was HOM for the church name. And when we first day come into Revive Church, a couple turned around and faced us and said, "You're home." And we knew we were where we needed to be, as well as I had just left being a worship leader for 14 years and had no inclination of ever having to play guitar or sing or anything. And the first day we came, they had an announcement on the screen. If you would like to join the worship team, and they said to fill out this form and all this stuff. So I did. I filled it out and kept coming back and never heard a thing. I mean, I never heard a single thing. I couldn't believe that had happened. And I never saw them put that ad up ever again. It was a one and done. They never asked again. I knew I was at the right place, but God made me wait 6 months to get an invite to be on the worship team. And it's funny how God will put you in positions to where you learn patience. I don't like patience. I had to wait for my wife to come back. But when we did get back together, there's a whole situation I missed about the wedding, the AA ring that I brought up and everything. When we were at the other church, they had a service where they were changing a name from one to another, and they took everything from the old name of the church and made a casket and threw everything that had been printed up, any labels on it, into the casket. So that point, I decided I was going to give up, and I still wasn't back together with my wife. I took off the ring that I had made with the AA and threw it in the casket and gave up. That was the night I got sick. So that very same night I gave up, the final night that I gave up is when I got sick and the Lord repaired my relationship. And that's how God works. That very same night, I was like, ugh. And looking back, I see God in every trauma and everything. He was in it. So if He can do it for me, I know He can do it for any of you out there. And the one thing I know is so can you. You can do it. Yeah, it's amazing how God can bring you through anything and everything.